Hey, what up, Long Beach? Welcome back to another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk, here presented by the Press-Telegram and Gazette newspapers and brought to you by Naples Rib Company. All of a sudden, we're four guys looking for a fifth for this open run right now because basketball season is back. We'll get to that in just a minute. I am sports editor JJ Fiddler to my right.
Sports editor Mike Gardabasio holding our true point guard, our guest, Vincent Gardabasio, a.k.a. the VKG machine.
Nice. Yeah, he would be fantastic at the point because he's just a giver.
And he just gives. He just turned 4 months old, so he doesn't have a lot of mileage on his knees yet. To my right,
Tyler Hendrickson coming through on my worst behavior. Hold up. Hold my phone. And I want to mention, if you are at a game coming up, because it's not only basketball season, we're coming towards football playoffs. More on that very soon.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, if you're at a game, hit us on Twitter at PT Gazette Sports, where you're going to find all those live updates. If we're not updating a game, let us know the score of the game that you're at. Use the hashtag LongBeachFB, and you can follow along with that and get the scores from every game that you're at. Because, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of important games coming up this Friday.
A lot of important games this Friday that will decide what type of bracket we are looking at this weekend. We will get to that in just a second. As well as, like we said, basketball back in business. Long Beach State men's and women's team opening up their season this weekend. And we'll also hit on the St. Anthony Athletic Hall of Fame and a few stories that you should know about. That is the stuff coming up on this episode of Long Beach Sports Talk. And you got to stick around. It's going to be a great show. We need green shirts with white block lettering that says, I survived draft day at Sports. Wait, no. It's I survived bracket day.
Bracket day.
At Long Beach Sports Talk.
Baby.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It is bracket day. Bracket weekend, really. Volleyball coming out on Saturday. Football, the main event on Sunday. And then we've got, what comes out on Monday? Water polo. Water polo comes out on Monday. So the fall playoffs right here, right now. We are actually going to have a special episode of Long Beach Sports Talk that will come out Sunday afternoon after we get back.
My favorite episode that we ever record of anything ever.
When we get back from bracket day, yeah. Bracket day is in Los Alamitos at the CIF office. Now,
it's literally a 4-minute drive from my house, which is part of why I like it. It's just like we watch football, you go talk to all the coaches, you get the brackets, you come back, you watch football, you talk about football, and then you call it a work day.
Yeah, pretty much. They spread out the release of the different divisions, so it's not everybody there at the same time, but it is a continuous flow of very large men in basketball shorts and flip-flops flipping coins in a parking lot and trading DVDs, which, if you don't know what's going on, looks quite shady.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, if you were at the Starbucks across the street, you might just think it was
what is going on
a bootleg convention.
Well, and let's be honest, I mean, it's a mix of people, because, obviously coaches come from different backgrounds. You got some private, some public schools, some rich schools, some not as rich schools, but everybody's on that same playing field. Everybody's there to figure out who they're going to play. They're all on that paper, and it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to see those coaches all together. One of the questions we're going to have for them is, do you know much about this team? And that's usually an answer that doesn't have a lot of meat to it. Like, no, we just got the film right now. We're not sure. But we've looked at all of these teams, and we kind of have an idea of what these teams are going to look like in the playoffs, who they're going to play maybe. And so we're going to run that down for you right now a little bit, kind of as a preview to the playoff bracket preview that we'll give you on Sunday.
Well, one thing I think is worth noting is that you can kind of tell how developed the program is by how much they have seen the teams that they could play, because Polly's been looking at the 4 or 6 teams they think they might play, and Jason Brown from Cabrillo has been texting me all day saying, who do you think we're going to play? I'd like to send somebody to scout their game. So It is something people start thinking about. We're not the only ones thinking about bracket day on Thursday, that's for sure.
No.
What we can say right now is that there are 10 teams. We're just specifically looking at the Pac-5 bracket, which is obviously the granddaddy of them all.
Norwalk's going to win the Southeast.
Sure. It's a 16-team bracket, and so right now, as of today, before Friday's games, there are 10 teams that are in that bracket locked down right now. Mike, go through the leagues and which 10 teams are already in.
We'll do it real fast.
Well, because Pac-5 is, as you know, the Moore League, the Trinity League, the Sarah League, and the Marmonte League, and the South Coast League.
Right, which, South Coast and the Moore League, I know.
I almost forgot it because it's so already decided.
If you're not in those leagues, you refer to the Moore League as Poly, and you refer to the South Coast League as Mission Viejo. But
pretty much.
The 10 teams that are in, we have 2 from the Trinity. Well, St. John Bosco has clinched the Trinity League champion. They'll be the 1 seed. Orange Lutheran or Mater Dei, they're playing on Friday. The winner of that gets the 2 seed if Bosco wins, which they will. The Moore League, we have 3 teams. Poly's got the 1 already. Cabrillo's got the 2. And it could be Lakewood, Milliken, or Compton for the 3. Lakewood is the only team that controls their destiny. If they win, they automatically get that 3 seed.
Real fast, Lakewood hosting Milliken, Battle of the Blueprint on Friday. Win and you're in for Lakewood. Win and force an envelope draw if you're Milliken.
Right.
Yeah,
That could have those 3 teams getting in. In the Sarah League, we've got Notre Dame and then Alemany or Crespi. They're playing. Whoever wins that game gets the 2nd. In the South Coast League, Mission Viejo and Tesoro, that was decided before the season even started. In the Marmonte, Oaks Christian, this is set, these 4. Oaks Christian at the 1, Westlake at the 2, St. Bonaventure at the 3, and Agura at the 4. Actually, excuse me. The 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 are playing each other because of the Marmonte League structure, so that will decide the order that they go in.
So those 4 teams are already locked down. They're just playing to see which teams are the 1 and 2, and then which teams are the 3 and the 4. That's that matchup. So those are the 10 teams that are in, but then now there's 6 remaining spots that are being fought over. 3 of them are auto, like you mentioned. There's the one in the Trinity, there's the one in the Sarah, and then there's the one in the Moore League. So those are the 3 auto bids that are up for grabs.
And then
there's 3 at-large teams, and that could be a number of teams, but the Trinity is definitely going to get probably at least 2 of those, right?
Right, and I think the question is, personally I'll say this, and I mean, I don't like the idea that the Trinity League can kind of just spend their way into changing high school football in Southern California. We've talked about that on this show many times. I don't like the way that's happening. That being said, you'd have to work pretty hard to argue to me that their 3rd at-large choice wouldn't be the best possible 16th team to get into this bracket, right?
Right.
So the teams we're looking at, the loser of the Mater Dei Olu game, Servite and Santa Margarita would be their 3 at-large considerations.
If Santa Margarita beats J. Sarah. Well,
right, yes. And if Bosco beats Servite. So we're assuming some things because you have to do that the last week of the year, obviously, in the Pac-5.
And Mater Dei coming off of 2 straight losses, and that J. Sarah team just upset Servite, which then turned Bosco into the 2-time champion of the Trinity League.
Yeah, you're right. You can't take anything for granted, especially in that league. The loser of Alemany Crespi in the Sarah, because the winner gets their 2 seed, the loser of that, I think, would be a strong choice for the 3rd at-large. But I think we all agree probably 2 of those Trinity League teams get a spot.
Yes, I would say 2, but
So your competitors for the 3rd spot would be Santa Margarita from the Trinity League, Crespi from the Sarah League, or Alemany, the loser of that game,
right.
and then the loser, and then either Thousand Oaks or Moore Park from the Marmonte League.
Maybe. But it would be hard to give one league all 3 of the at-large bids.
Yes.
Which, I mean, if any league could make the case, it would be the Trinity, but you just feel like one other league is going to get represented, and Mike, it's probably from the Sarah. It's probably either Alemany or Crespi, whichever team loses. I think that would be the most likely.
I think that's who gets that last spot personally. I think it'll be Olu, Mater Dei, and Servite are in the playoffs in some order or another from the Trinity League team. In addition to Bosco, obviously. And then that Crespi or Alemany, whichever loses that game, gets that last at-large spot.
And let's not even get into what we think as far as matchups and all that kind of stuff, because there's so many rules. It depends on who's in. It's going to be absolutely bananas, but it looks like the 4 seeds, which there are only 4, appear to maybe be set.
Yes.
Where you've got Bosco as the 1 seed, Mission Viejo as the 2 seed. Those are the undefeated teams. Poly at the 3 seed, and then the winner of Oaks and Westlake will probably get that 4th. Right now it's Oaks, so if they win, you would assume they hold that spot. And then if Westlake beats them, they might earn that bump up to the 4. But, I mean, it's anyone's guess, and we're trying to make educated guesses here, but you got to go out on the field and make something happen.
Or Alemany may jump into it.
Who knows,
It's gonna be very interesting. I'm quite curious to see what happens. I'll actually go out as far as say this. If Crespi beats Alemany, I think Alemany's guaranteed an at-large spot. Okay. I think that they get it. They're ranked 5th right now. They've been ranked pretty much all year. They got a great overall record. So that's what we think. That's sort of the way it lays out right now. It's obviously going to get a lot more complicated on Sunday. If you wake up Sunday early for bracket day, we will have our predictions up because we do always talk about that. And make sure you're following at PT Gazette Sports as we already told you to, or checking the website out because we're going to have updates from those games that decide the other playoff spots on the Twitter, not just the local games like we always do.
Bracket day, baby!
Recently up on the website, our top 10 plays from October. You got to let us know which plays you think are going to be in the top 10 for November and any month going forward. Hit us on Twitter, #LBTop10. If you've got a great play on your own camera or some coach's film, send it our way, and we'll put it up for consideration to be at the top 10 every month. Da-da-da, da-da-da.
I got a basketball Jones, baby. And it's a good thing, because it's going to get cured this weekend. Long Beach State, men's and women's basketball. Women on the road at Cal. Final Four team last year, who ended up falling to those Cinderella story, Louisville Cardinal. And the Long Beach State men's basketball team trying to win a third straight regular season Big West title, but trying to wash a bad taste out of their mouth from last year, both on the floor and off the floor.
Yeah, head coach Jody Wynn told me when I was out to talk about the preview last week, love opening up against Final Four teams so that they can do their ring night while they're beating you.
Yeah, that's real tough, but hey, if you want to get to the top of the mountain, you have to see how to do it first, right? You have to play those tough teams. We'll talk about that in a minute with the men's basketball team, but the women's basketball team, this group, this team, has been a long time coming, right? Or at least it's felt like that.
Well, it's sort of, if you remember the Big Four, right, the Casper Ware men's basketball unit that came in together, you've sort of got that. Literally more than half the team are juniors, a part of that junior class. And yeah, they've been through the trenches together. They've seen a lot. And they, in their freshman year, got to the conference championship game in the tournament. Last year, they got knocked out in the first round. So they've seen the high, they've seen the low. I think they've learned a lot about their limitations just talking to them. It's a mature group of kids. And then they're sort of being supported by a group of 5 very talented freshmen who've come in. Everyone on the team's a junior or freshman. It's very, very strange the way that it lays out like that. But yeah, I do. I think it's a very experienced team, and I think you're going to see good basketball from them, especially defensively this year.
Biggest story with that team has been injuries recently and actually for the last few years. It seems like such a weird question to ask, but I don't know if you talked to Jody Wynn about this when you did your work for the preview that you can read in the Press Telegram this weekend and also in the Gazettes right now. What can you do to try to avoid injuries? Do you not practice it much? Do you take the intensity down? I mean, Jody Wynn's not one to turn it down, if you know what I mean.
No, the answer is no. And I mean, the only thing you could really do would be to somehow recruit Joanna Mann to play for your team. I mean, across all women's sports in college, there's an injury epidemic because of how much overuse is being put on these high school kids. We've seen it with the women's volleyball team. See it with the women's basketball team. We've seen it with the women's soccer team this year. It happens everywhere. As far as softball might be a little bit insulated from that, but
there's always less injuries in softball and baseball, but
of course. But yeah, I mean, across the board, it's just, I mean, there really isn't a solution. If you're one of the top 10 programs in the country who can recruit whoever they want, you can get one of the 2 6'3" centers who've never had a knee injury in the country, then you don't have a problem. But for everyone else, it's a legitimate issue. And I don't really know that there is a solution. It's certainly not turning down the intensity. You know, having been to 2 practices and seeing the way that they continue to work, that's just not what they do. They are pretty good right now on injuries. The sound you're hearing is 49er fans knocking on wood.
Yeah, so far so
good. No timetable for the return of Devin Hudson, who's an all-tournament player. No timetable for the return of Chantel Dooley, who is a very good guard for that team. Bianca Balthazar should be back early in the season. She's been doing some actually revolutionary concussion work that we'll probably have a story on a little bit later this month.
And you can't not mention the Sanchez, bro.
Right, yeah, Alex Sanchez back, obviously one of our favorite players, the stat box filler, stat box killer, Alex Sanchez.
YMCA game haver.
Yeah, she's got the old man game down, and I don't think she'd be offended by me saying that either. She's back. I think she's certainly going to be the person to lead that team, especially with Devin Hudson being out. Sanchez named to the 6-player Big West preseason all-conference team, so obviously big things expected out of her.
So this weekend, Saturday at 3 o'clock, the men's schedule gets underway. Another homecoming festivity-filled parking lot out there outside the mid before we go inside. Long Beach State taking on Hawaii Pacific this year. And this Long Beach State team, like I said earlier, trying to win a 3rd straight regular season crown, but it feels like a decade ago that they had won that 2nd straight one, but it really was just 8 months, and this team is so different between the one that lost at Honda Center to that upstart UCI team, and then the one that's going to start this year looking up at the number 1 in the preseason poll, UCI Anteaters.
I want to just point out that Hawaii Pacific is not an all-star team of Hawaii and Pacific. That's a completely different school. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Tyler.
Well, I was like, when do we get to play Hawaii Atlantic? Why is it just the Hawaii that's in the Pacific Ocean that comes to play at the Pyramid? Is it the travel cost?
Idea for a feature. Now, I will say, yeah, this team is so different, JJ. It's such a different atmosphere. Head coach Dan Munson actually spoke Tuesday night at the Century Club. A recap that was in Wednesday's newspaper. But he talked about how different this team is going to be, but he said he thinks they're going to be fun. It's going to be fun to grow with this team. A lot of new faces and a lot of changes from last year, which were needed changes.
Yep.
And he was willing and ready to make those changes. And so it's going to be a work in progress. This team's going to grow. But everyone, I think, is interested to see, who are some of these guys and what are they going to bring?
We talked about the personality of this team when we reported and showed you actually on this show from one of those first practices in the first week. Mike Caffey leading the way. He's not really a boisterous guy, but he's an excitable guy when he's around that team, and you can really see the growth of him as a leader right now. He's coming back for his junior year. Second leading rebounder, Dan Jennings, is going to be back. Physically imposing was a way to define Dan Jennings when he first arrived here. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but svelte is a way to define Dan Jennings right now. He did work in this offseason, and he looks great on the floor.
He was a bit of a Shrek when he first got there. He was a big, ogre, imposing man who did not move well, is the other side of that. And you're right, I saw him at Ralph's actually last week, and I almost didn't recognize him. I know Dan pretty well, and I saw him and was like, JJ wasn't kidding. He's lost half his weight, it looks like.
He looks real good.
Well, and he can be a big-time player in the Big West with, his talent and experience. And now if he's got better conditioning and he can move better and things like that, it'll be interesting to see the depth from this team because they're going to be kind of trying to figure out who's ready to play and who's ready to contribute.
Well, let's be real. Dan Munson has never been, I'll hang my hat on my depth type coach.
Right, exactly.
So if that is the case this year, they might be in trouble. But I think we also need to keep an eye on guys who were on the bench last year who saw the talent on the floor and then saw it fall short of expectations, not only from people around the program, but from the team itself. I'm talking about guys like Tyler Lamb and Bradford Jones, who didn't get a shot on the floor last year and witnessed that stuff, and then have now seen what a good college basketball practice and a good college program can feel like. Does that then turn into, one, better basketball, but two, and more importantly, a better team dynamic, which, as we know, in the Big West, any night, any team can win it, and it all depends on what happens on the floor in the Honda Center, so you need that team chemistry. Also see UC Irvine 2012.
Yeah, it's going to definitely be a lot better. The chemistry, it's not saying too much that it's going to be better, but it certainly will.
Well, it's kind of interesting to me because this is really the age-old debate in basketball of talent versus coaching and chemistry, right? Like basketball, more than any other sport, you hear that debate come up all the time. And obviously the NBA has sort of proved talent is maybe what you need to have. And actually, I kind of think Dan Munson would agree with that. He's been going around telling people he's not sure if they're going to win a game this year.
Tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, no, making jokes like that. But he's certainly not saying, well, our chemistry's better, so we're definitely winning a conference championship,
right.
That being said, he's obviously enjoying it more, and I think if you're a fan of the sport, I think you'll enjoy this year's team more, even though there's significantly less talent. There's no NBA pick that's graduating off of this year's team.
Right. Well, 49er fans, you can enjoy all of that basketball coverage on Sunday in the Press Telegram. Pick it up for the second straight weekend, actually the second straight Sunday. The sports page is going to be wrapped with all of your black and gold news. Hey, come on, give it to him. Come on. Come on, Bottle, get loose.
One thing I really enjoyed, obviously people listening to the show know I'm sort of a history nerd when it comes to Long Beach sports. One thing I enjoyed this week was kind of getting to help shepherd the features that we did. St. Anthony is having their inaugural Athletics Hall of Fame ceremony on Saturday, and they've got, I would say, probably their 12 best athletes ever that are going into the Hall of Fame, including 2 coaches. But we did features on 4 of those people, including 3 football players, and I learned a lot from each one. I really enjoyed reading what everybody came up with. All of the biggest names, including some people we didn't get to, like the first ever African-American graduate of St. Anthony, who also played 3 sports, including varsity boys baseball, which I thought was kind of interesting. So sort of a trailblazer in every direction, and probably their 2 best coaches as well. But Tyler did Derek Martin, the best basketball player to ever come out of St. Anthony, one of the best basketball players to ever come out of Long Beach in general. and actually had a really cool story from that interview.
Yeah, you can pick up that story today in the Press Telegram.
Yeah, and Derek, cool guy to talk to. Actually, he's going to be in the city to speak at the Long Beach Century Club on Tuesday, which is pretty interesting. So an opportunity to come hear him speak in person. But yeah, he's an assistant coach at St. John's. Had a great career at UCLA. Was a McDonald's All-American at St. Anthony, the first person to do that for the Saints. And now Kendall Cooper joined him by playing on Derek Martin Court. And it's interesting. He told me that sometimes he'll come by the school if he's in the area, and just sit in the parking lot and think about those old glory days, and maybe go in and shoot some baskets on his court. And it's just a weird thing. I mean, who else has that type of opportunity? And he put the essay in swag with that one.
I mean, if you're the security guard at the Armory at St. Anthony and this guy walks up and is like, hey, I'm going to shoot some hoops, how do you tell the dude whose name is on the floor?
You don't.
No, you can't come in here.
You don't. That's why Coach K lives in Cameron Indoor.
Well, I got a chance to talk to William, better known as B.I. Mays.
Who's William Mays?
Right?
I've never heard that name.
Nobody would know who that is, but B.I. was actually the quarterback of the 1948 CIF championship football team for St. Anthony, probably the most famous team in St. Anthony history, no matter the sport. They were the underdogs all the way through that playoff run. He had a funny quote just saying, like, the playoff games were the toughest. Like, the championship game was the easiest part. Like, getting to those games and being the small underdog was the most difficult part. But the guys on that team, a group of them ended up going to Cal together. And the coolest story I got was they were this close to being on the cover of Time magazine.
This story it legitimately breaks my heart, and I almost wish you wouldn't tell it because it's going to bum out people.
They took a picture of these St. Anthony Saints. They were going to call the story the Golden Saints. They have an iconic picture taken by award-winning photographer of them walking the campus of Berkeley. Mays still has this picture in his house. So they're taking on USC. Cal was number one ranked at that point. They're taking on USC. And instead of that story going on Time magazine the next weekend, the great Johnny O gets injured in that game. We'll talk about that in a second. And Frank Gifford, yes, that Frank Gifford, hauls off a 70-yard touchdown that ends up winning that game. Instead of Golden Saints, the story of the do-gooders on Time magazine next week, the story was injuries in football. Some things never change.
I need to scan that photo from him. We need to have that photo. It's
crazy.
Too good. I was told this story off the record, but the statute of limitations has passed. So I'm gonna diverge into a little bit of poly history and tell this. The 2001 championship game against De La Salle, Sports Illustrated had a poly cover mocked up for if they won that game, for the public school ending the private school streak and all this other stuff. And instead, Poly loses, so it was like Carson Palmer or something on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Devastating. Well, I just mentioned Johnny O, and Mike, you did the Johnny O story, and it was really interesting because our stories kind of touched literally in the paper.
Yeah, so Johnny O also obviously key member, probably the greatest football player to ever come out of St. Anthony. Number 4 overall draft pick, one of the highest draft picks to ever come out of Long Beach as well. And had a decade career in the pros. But yeah, you mentioned the injury to Johnny O, and that was something, he passed away in 1996, but that was a story, I'd researched a lot about Johnny O for my football book, and so the story that I had heard was he was injured, and there's video of this, because the USC players...
Pat Canamella.
Pat Canamella literally was grabbing his foot after every play and twisting his leg around, because Johnny O had a knee injury he actually suffered his junior year of high school. And he more or less won him a CIF championship with
one leg,
with a half-torn ACL.
Yeah.
He played his whole senior year, averaged 11 yards a carry, and scored 4 touchdowns in the CIF semifinals with a partially torn ACL. So he gets to this game, and everybody knows about his injury because it was written about a lot in the Press Telegram and everything. And so Pat's literally trying to turn his leg around, like openly, because at that time, like, brutality was sort of the name of the game in football. And that's just looking at what the NFL and college sports is now. That's shocking to me. It's like, oh yeah, well obviously he's trying to rip his knee off.
Crazy, just crazy. We'll have more St. Anthony previews in the paper today, like we said, or you can go back on the website and check out that Mays and Olszewski story from the paper yesterday, on Wednesday, and then on Saturday, St. Anthony Athletics Hall of Fame. All the coverage you need from that, right here. It is impossible to avoid this Miami Dolphins hazing / just idiocy and abuse. I don't want to talk about it but I want to talk about what it made me think about. We're out here covering amateur sports, and I think that lessons learned while playing amateur sports shapes people, and you can't tell me that stuff Richie Incognito did or saw or was surrounded by when he was a youngster didn't then turn that guy into the animal that he is today.
Well, we see a lot of teams, right, JJ? And so all those teams have locker room dynamics. And so this is kind of, it does find a way back to relate to, high school sports and hazing specifically, and not to put this, atrocity into that category.
Well, because this isn't hazing. This is beyond that.
Right.
But it does have people talking about hazing, and I think this is a good opportunity for young athletes and people who are surrounded by young athletes to go, hey, what can we learn from this situation? I mean, I played on some good teams when I was a kid, but one of the funnest teams I ever played on was my freshman football team. We were 500. Half of that had to do because I was just an average quarterback, but it was a great time, and that's what a lot of amateur sports is missing nowadays. Is that there's so much pressure that you forget to have a good time. We've covered some teams that weren't very good, but we loved covering them because they were so close and just good teammates and good people.
Well, and to be honest, I'm glad that you pointed out this isn't a hazing, or I've heard it called a bullying issue. You're right. I mean, it's abuse and it's harassment. It's well beyond.
This is a workplace.
It's
a workplace.
It's well beyond.
I just
read a Sports Illustrated feature from 3 weeks ago about the honey badger with the Cardinals, and they're talking about, he had to get a funny haircut and they messed with his mohawk. That's hazing.
That's rookie
right?
stuff.
Like that. Yeah, exactly. This is so far beyond that, and I don't know, man. To some extent, to me, it goes even beyond what you're saying about high school stuff. I just at some point you just can't tell someone you're going to kill them and sexually assault their mother. Like, regardless of what high school you came out of, regardless of what lessons someone didn't teach you, like, by the time you're 20, or in Richie's case, older than that, you've got to take responsibility for yourself and say, this is obviously not the thing to do.
Right.
It's just a good person, bad person thing. What was really disturbing to me was the report that came out today. And actually, this was building last night. The Sun-Herald said last night, gird your loins, Dolphin fans. It's going to get ugly tomorrow.
Yeah.
Today, the revelation that Miami coaches told Incognito to soften Martin up.
Now they harden him up. They wanted to toughen him up.
They said toughen him up, they said soften him up, and they said have a conversation with him that will bring him into the fold.
Yeah, and I don't think they then thought that he was going to go say what he said.
But what did they think he was going to say?
Who knows? And you're letting the dog off the leash.
Well, and that's just, it's a warning to be careful. It's, coaches need to be careful, players need to be careful, and it's just, there's better ways to bond, and there's better ways to motivate, and I think hazing is really becoming a thing of the past where you don't really need to do all these silly, childish things. There's ways to come together and unify in a more positive way. Not to be sing-songy here, but there's ways to bond as a team where you're not fighting and degrading one another. There's no place.
Listen, let's also say that football isn't for everybody, and a football locker room is never all rainbows and flowers and lollipops. And it's for a physical, aggressive personality.
And it's two linemen, so it's the people who live that the most.
Exactly.
But
there's a line.
And to me, this is like, it initially looked like this was like, is that over the line? Is it not? He was making fun of him and all this stuff. It's so clearly over the line, it's not really a conversation.
Yes.
I was at poly practice yesterday. Raul Lara was talking about the senior leadership that team had last year because Gerard Wicks and Montesimo Lauga were on everybody in practice to make sure they were practicing hard and doing everything. They'd yell at guys. But that's football. That's the stuff that's leadership. That's the stuff you're supposed to see.
And I would put the onus on all of this on the veteran leadership of the Miami Dolphins. That's a lot on you guys, man. Everybody knows what's going on inside the locker room. Coaches might not know what's going on inside the locker room, but those locker room walls talk.
They have a leadership committee, and Richie is one of the 5 guys on that.
Yeah, what are those other 4 dudes doing? That's my question.
Right.
And hey, if you're a leader,
pretending they didn't know what was happening.
If you're a leader on a team right now, you should take note and be like, hey, if I was ever in that situation, I would never let something like that happen. And that's going to beget not only a good teammates, but also probably a good team on the field.
Well, let's bring it back to a local example. You saw plenty of strife with the Wilson football team, with the fighting problems that they had, the infighting and things like that. But they found a way to bond. And you talked about that story, JJ, where they had the haunted house that really brought them together. There are positive ways that a team can unify and get past some of their problems or whatever happens. So if you're an underclassman right now and you look forward to being a senior leader later in your career, think of ways that you can bond your team, not around just punishing the younger guys, but find a way that you guys can come together and bond in a positive way and really enjoy that playing experience, and then going on into college and going on into the pros, because, I mean, obviously we cover a lot of elite athletes here in the city.
That's it. That's all. There ain't no more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk in the books. Huge weekend. We already mentioned it, but I'll say it again. Bracket Day on Sunday. Come back to the Gazette newspaper website and also the Press Telegram newspaper website to find our special edition of this show as we break down the Pac-5 bracket and all the other brackets that involve local football teams. We'll also have the volleyball brackets out at that point, so we might even be able to mention that. It's going to be a jam-packed show that is going to be full of information that you're going to want to know going into next week.
And we'll have interviews with coaches, so there'll be some guest speakers on and stuff like that. You'll definitely get completely laced up on what you need to know for the playoffs.
Also, Long Beach State basketball, we already mentioned it, all that coverage right here. For everybody involved in this show, the Press Telegram, Gazette newspapers, and just the city of Long Beach and the sports scene, thank you. We will see you in the stands this weekend. For Mike, for Vincent, for Tyler, for JJ, for everybody else that just loves sports, we're right there with you. Take care, y'all.
Playoffs! Puke Lelouch.
Puke Lelouch, dude. That's so solid.
He's the puke girl.
He's just out here trying to help the ball club win, you know? Just taking it one game at a time.
Puke Lelouch.
He's breathing out of the wrong eyelid.